I never imagined I'd see my mother again, but the woman I found on the street had her face. I stared, frozen in disbelief, while my heart thundered against my ribcage. The trembling figure in front of me was hunched over, hair matted and clothes tattered, but the eyes, those familiar, kind eyes. They shone bright, yet were clouded with a world of pain. The scent of desperation hung heavy in the air, mixing with the distant sound of sirens. A lump formed in my throat as I took a tentative step closer. My hands shook, and I clenched them into fists, wondering if I was dreaming. The woman looked up, and in that moment, the chilling reality hit me. Her face, though unmistakably hers, was marred by deep scars and wrinkles I never thought could belong to her. I could barely breathe. Memories flooded my mind, vivid and excruciating. I remembered my mother's laughter echoing through our little home, the warmth of her embrace, the way she would always hold my hand in the dark. The emptiness after she vanished had consumed me for years. What had happened to her? How could she end up like this? Mom? My voice barely escaped, raw and broken. I scanned the street, bustling with oblivious pedestrians. How could nobody see her? Their lives continued, while mine hung in the balance, suspended in this surreal moment. Please, her voice was hoarse, fragile, as if it might shatter at any instant. Help me. It was like a wave crashing over me. I could see the fear in her eyes, the desperate plea that twisted my insides. This wasn't the reunion I had hoped for. This was worse. My heart raced, each beat a reminder of the years lost, the nights I spent praying she was safe. As she reached out, something flickered in her gaze. A spark of recognition? A hint at a truth buried deep? I needed answers, but fear gripped my chest. Where have you been? I cried, tears blurring my vision. Before she could respond, a distant voice shattered our moment. Get away from her. A figure appeared in the crowd, barreling toward us with urgency. Heart racing, I turned toward the approaching stranger. The tension coiled around us like a noose, tightening with each step, and just like that, the woman's expression morphed. Panic. Recognition. Was it fear of the stranger, or something deeper? I felt the ground shift beneath me as reality twisted. What did she know? Why was she here, like this? Mom? I called one last time, my voice fragile, laced with a million questions as I stood between two worlds. The stranger lunged forward, and I was left teetering on the edge. What lay ahead, an embrace or an abyss? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure came closer, the urgency of his strides tugging at something deep within me. My heart thudded wildly as I shifted my focus between my mother and the stranger, torn between the dire need to protect the woman who had once held me close and the instinctual fear washing over me like a cold wave. Memories and dreams collided within my mind, a cacophony of hope and despair that left me breathless. Get away from her! The man shouted again, his voice rising like a storm, drowning out the noise of the street around us. She doesn't want your help. Who are you? I demanded, stepping in front of my mother, instinctively shielding her as fear twisted in my belly. I'm a friend, he panted, glancing at her with an expression I couldn't decipher. But in that split second, I saw something flicker beneath his surface. Was it sympathy or disdain? You're only going to make it worse for her. Just walk away. My mother whimpered softly behind me, and I turned to look at her. The fear etched in her features sent a jolt through me. She was drowning in a world that didn't recognize her, an echo of the woman I once knew, and her vulnerability pierced through my protective instincts. I could sense the weight of her experiences pressing down on her, invisible chains that had bound her to the shadows of the life she'd led. Mom, please, I whispered, pleading with her to say something, anything to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. Her eyes darted between me and the stranger, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I caught a glimmer of hope, a silent appeal that perhaps we could still connect, despite the gulf time had created. As the stranger edged closer, and I could feel tension coiling like a spring. "You don't understand what she's been through," he said, gruff but with an undercurrent of urgency. "You can't just barge in here and think you know what's best." "What do you mean?" I shot back, confusion mingling with desperation. "You think I asked for this? I've spent my entire life looking for her. I need to know she's safe." "What happened to her?" The man hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. And in that brief stillness, I began to search my mother's face, hoping to ignite a flicker of recognition between us. "I'm here, Mom. I'm not leaving you." Her gaze shifted, and for a moment, I dared to believe she understood. "I can't," she stammered, her voice a frail whisper. "It's too dangerous, sweetheart." "Dangerous?" My heart raced, an orchestra of anxiety playing discordant notes in my chest. "What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, the stranger stepped forward, his face a mixture of resolve and protectiveness. "You shouldn't have come here. You have no idea who's watching, who's looking for her." It felt like the air was sucked from my lungs as his words sunk in. Who was looking for her? What did he know? Wave after wave of questions crashed over me, brewing a storm that churned with confusion and fear. All I wanted was to pull my mother into my arms, to hold her tightly and never let go, but the uncertainty became a wall, isolating us. "Please," I implored, desperation lacing my tone, "I just want to help her. I deserve to know what happened." "Help?" The stranger's voice cracked with bitter irony. "You don't even know the half of it. She's not the same woman you remember." Tears pooled in my eyes, the weight of his words suffocating me. I turned back to my mother, her brow furrowed and her hands trembling. "Mom, please let me help you." My voice broke, hanging on the thin thread between hope and despair. As she opened her mouth to speak, a sudden commotion erupted from the gathering crowd, a shout, then a scream. A figure burst into view, galloping toward us, panic etched in every line of their face. "Run!" they yelled. "They're coming!" The world around us shifted once more, the precarious balance of our fragile reunion tipping toward chaos. My mother's face went pale, a flash of recognition mingling with fear. The stranger's eyes widened, brimming with an urgency that propelled him forward. In that fleeting moment, every part of me screamed to flee, to grab my mother and escape the dawning terror. Yet, all I could manage was an outstretched hand. "Mom! Please, take my hand." The world plunged into a dark abyss of confusion as the angry voices drew near. My heart raced as I bore witness to the dawning realization that everything I thought I could restore might be slipping away again, and just like that, I was thrust back into the unknown, teetering on the edge of either salvation or a fate sealed in shadow. My mind struggled to comprehend the chaos smashing against my consciousness with the force of a tidal wave. I could see my mother's eyes darting, both alarmed and searching, and I felt the cold grip of fear tightening around my throat. "Mom! Please, don't leave me!" I shouted against the rising clamor, but her gaze turned inward, a distant look that felt like nails on a chalkboard. The stranger was moving now, his posture shifting from neutral to defensive, his body language a silent protest against whatever dark storm was brewing on the horizon. He turned his head toward the source of the shouts, concern etched into his features. "We need to go now," he growled, urgency propelling him closer to my mother. A part of me wanted to fight back, to challenge him, to claim my mother as my own in the fierce glare of impending danger. "But what about her?" I protested, my voice cracking with emotion. "What if you're wrong? What if she needs me?" His eyes closed momentarily, as if bracing against the weight of an unspoken truth. "You don't know," he said quietly, "but it's safer if you go. I'll keep her safe." "Safe from what?" I demanded, the world around me swirling in shades of dread. Deep within, a flicker of doubt ignited. I had yearned for this moment for so long, yet it felt like an illusion, a mirage taunting me with promises that were just out of reach. Before he could respond, the new arrival, a figure cloaked in urgency, burst through the crowd, eyes wide and frantic. "He's here! They're hunting her down! We don't have much time." My breath hitched, each heartbeat drawing closer to an edge I feared to approach. "Who? Who's after her?" I managed to choke out, my voice a worried whisper as I turned back to the stranger. "It's not safe for you," he insisted, turning his back to the approaching chaos. "You don't understand the danger. You'll put her in greater peril." My mother's hands trembled, fingers trembling like leaves caught in a storm, and I reached for her with a desperate need, a longing to somehow stitch the frayed fabric of our connection back together. "Mom, please. You don't have to hide, you can come home with me. We can fix this." But instead of reaching for me, she recoiled. "No, honey, you have to go. They'll hurt you too." Her breath was ragged, the fear pooling in her eyes as she spoke words that felt like splintering glass cutting into me, tearing apart the hope I clutched so tightly. "No!" I shouted, an animal cry born of helplessness. "I've spent my entire life searching for you. I'm not going to run away from you now, not when we're so close." An inexplicable sound echoed through the thrumming chaos, a low, almost mournful growl that sent chills racing through me. My heart drummed louder, syncing with the thud of footsteps approaching, closer and closer. "Listen to her," the stranger urged, his voice a raw edge of desperation. "If they find you here, it'll all be over. We can't afford to linger any longer." And just like that, a realization gashed through my chest. This wasn't just about reuniting over shared hugs and tears. This was a battle against unseen enemies creeping toward us, poised to snatch away our flickering bond. I had chased so long after the ghost of the mother I once knew, unaware that in doing so, I had unknowingly drawn closer to the very threats endangering us both. With every ounce of steely resolve, I inhaled deeply, tears stinging the back of my eyes, and looked fiercely at my mother. "I won't let them take you from me again. I promise, I won't let anyone hurt you." Just as I reached out one last time, desperation etched into every move, a hand shot in from the shadows, dark and swift. Before I could react, it clasped around my wrist, yanking me back as my mother's expression morphed into a mix of terror and distress. "Run! Please, just run!" In that paralyzing instant, the air vibrated with an urgency that cracked through my heart, forcing me into an impromptu choice, to engage or flee. I felt a sudden surge of instinct, propelling me forward as I stumbled away from the hold. But as I turned, I locked eyes with my mother one last time, only to witness something unfold that shattered everything I believed. Within her eyes, a fleeting look of recognition shifted into something darker, a deep festering dread that begged for silence. And then, I heard his voice, an all too familiar whisper echo through the chaos around us, crisp and undeniable. "You didn't think you could escape me, did you, my dear?" A shadow emerged from the thrumming crowd, and in that moment, as recognition froze my heart, I realized the figure approaching had the same stony features as my mother. But this was a different being entirely, one cloaked in an aura of dread and darkness that sent tremors racing through my limbs. I never imagined I'd see my mother again, but the woman I found on the street had her face, and now, it was threatening to unravel everything I cherished, all under the relentless gaze of the man who had haunted the edges of my dreams. The world around me blurred as cold fear surged through my veins, and time fractured in that split second, leaving me suspended in disbelief. The figure, my mother's shadow, cloaked in an aura I couldn't decipher, stepped forward, and my breath caught in my throat as every memory I had clung to twisted and warped under its gaze. "No, it can't be," I whispered, my heart pounding wildly against my ribs as my mind raced to provide a rational explanation, a way out of this unfolding nightmare. But the familiarity of her expression twisted like a knife, revealing something I hardly recognized, the edges of her features sharp and almost predatory. "Little dove," the man's voice dripped with a sinister charm that wrapped around my senses, "did you really think you could tear down the walls I built around her? She is my key, and neither of you are going anywhere." His words slithered through the air, sinking into my skin, igniting a frenzy of dread within. I turned to the stranger, hoping to find reassurance in his expression, but he stood frozen, almost intimidated, caught in a web of fear that radiated from the approaching figure. Mom! I cried, searching her eyes for a flicker of recognition, a stubborn spark of the woman who once held my hand and sang soothing lullabies. Please, fight it. You have to remember me. We can escape together. The shadow of my mother opened her mouth like a marionette, but instead of words, a guttural growl escaped, one that vibrated within my core, launching me further into despair. You should have stayed hidden. You don't belong in this world, and now it's too late. For a fleeting moment, my mother's warm essence flickered behind that dark veil, begging for release. I stepped closer, daring to push past the engulfing dread, searching for the soul I recognized beneath those piercing, unyielding eyes. Mom! Please, look at me! As the shadow advanced, the stranger lunged forward, thrusting an arm to shield me from the encroaching entity. We need to leave. Now! His voice, raw and urgent, embedded itself into my being, spurring me to react suddenly. Flickers of light danced at the periphery of my vision, little glows like embers seeking shelter in the storm. A group of bystanders, unaware of the supernatural conflict brewing, began to sidestep toward the streets, casting curious glances our way. They saw the fear etched on my face, the confusion swirling through the air, igniting trails of sympathy. Help me! I screamed, the desperation spilling out, the words snatching at hearts that beat with humanity amid the encroaching shadows. But my cry seemed to fall into the churning chaos, swallowed whole before it even reached their ears. In that moment, a tiny flicker of hope ignited within me. Strangers, despite the grit and grime of the streets, might offer the unexpected warmth of assistance. I could feel it, the air crackled with the possibility of kindness in a world twisted with darkness. Please? I desperately pleaded, my gaze darting between the stranger's fierce determination and the shadow's relentless advance. But they all stood paralyzed, grappling with the enormity of the scene unfolding. Suddenly, there was a distant pop, a sound like fireworks. A wild blast that sent shockwaves rippling through the crowd. The people jolted, narrowing their eyes toward the street where a parade of light momentarily spilled from a storefront. Before I could fully process the chaos, the figure with my mother's face hesitated, turning briefly toward the light. Get back, or I'll make sure she sees what true pain feels like. The threat resonated in my bones, yet the stricken crowd seemed drawn to it. My mother's features momentarily a marionette caught in the actor's grip. Seizing the moment, I grasped the stranger's arm, clinging to the last thread of hope. Now! I whispered fiercely, urging him to join me in our flight toward the glimmering light ahead. As we surged forward, I felt energy pool in my core, beckoning me to escape, to forge onward despite the panic tearing through my insides. Yet, just as fluttering relief began to settle in, a searing jolt hit me squarely in the back, an invisible force striking as the shadow lunged, determined to reclaim its prize. The world lunged, and in that breaking moment, two paths unfurled before me, one leading towards the light and the unknown, the other bound to the darkness from which I might never emerge. Just as I teetered on the edge of choice, the stranger's grip tightened in determination. Trust me! He shouted, his voice a beacon in the storm. But over the din, a haunting laughter echoed behind us, rising above fragments of my fading hope. This isn't over. You can't run from me forever, I will find you. Torn between the undeniable pull of family and the certainty of danger, I threw myself toward the light, grounding my fear in the chance for survival, neither knowing what lay ahead nor whether I'd ever see my mother again. A single glance back, one more fleeting moment, and the realization settled in my bones like ice. The fight was far from over, the battle just begun, and darkness would not let go without a fight. The light enveloped us as we burst forward, pulling me away from the shadow of my mother and into a small, brightly lit boutique. Shelves of vibrant fabrics and colorful trinkets sparkled and shimmered, a stark contrast to the darkness that chased us. The air was thick with the scent of sandalwood and fresh cotton, grounding me momentarily as I recalibrated my thoughts. Where do we go? I gasped, out of breath, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins like wildfire. The stranger, whose name still echoed in the back of my mind like a distant song, glanced around, searching for an escape route. Back there, through the stockroom. He whispered urgently, nodding toward a narrow door at the far end of the store. With no other options and a frantic heart, we made our way, each hurried step echoing the rapid beat of my heart. As we crossed the threshold, the small warehouse-like area came alive with the hum of fluorescent lights, casting harsh shadows that danced upon the walls. I could hear my own breath rasping in my throat, thinning with each passing moment. I pressed a hand against my stomach, feeling as if my insides might wade into darkness too. The stranger peered outside the door, his face tight with focus. I think we might have lost her," he whispered half to himself as he turned back to me, searching my eyes for any trace of reassurance. It felt like a dare to hope, but the buzzing anxiety in my veins refused to quiet. Who was that?" I managed to stammer, words laced with trembling acknowledgement of the truth we faced. "My mom, or whatever that was, isn't he gone?" It felt like her, but my voice trailed off as the heaviness sunk deeper into my chest. "The shadows know the weak," he said, his gaze steady yet filled with sadness. "And right now, you're the key they're after." I felt the weight of his words press down on me, a mixture of fear and frustration igniting within. "And what about you? You've been here, but I don't even know your name. Why are you trying to help me?" He hesitated, a storm of emotions brewing in his dark eyes. "Because you're not just her daughter. There is something within you they want to power, maybe. You're more than your mother's bloodline." Skepticism flickered across my mind. I was terrified, yet a part of me wanted to believe there was a strength lurking just beneath the surface of my existence, waiting to be claimed. What if I can't fight it? My voice caught, an emotional tremor there that betrayed my hidden doubts. Before he could answer, a faint sound echoed from outside the door, a low growl that sent chills spiraling down my spine. The urgency in his eyes returned, accompanied by a palpable fear I hadn't expected from him. "We don't have much time." Just as he reached for my hand, the front door of the shop burst open, and the world twisted in an echo of familiarity. Figures cloaked in shadows entered, their features obscured but their intent clear. The air thickened with an oppressive energy, the kind that chills the soul and paralyzes the heart. "No!" I shouted, instinctively pushing away from the door as panic blurred my thoughts. "They're here. We need to get out." With no clear path but the shadows looming ever closer, we rushed deeper into the stockroom. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, the thumping drowning out the dark laughter that chased us. "Find a way to hide." We stumbled into a small storage room, cluttered with boxes and fabric rolls that pooled upon the floor. I could barely think, instincts taking over as I shoved myself between two large crates, forcing the stranger to follow suit. As the shadows passed by the entrance, their whispers infiltrating the quiet space, dread coiled tightly around me like a serpent. "What do they want?" I barely managed to whisper, the words digging into my throat like thorns. "To make your mother their pawn, I think," he replied, his voice barely above a breathless murmur. "But she isn't lost forever. If we can break the cycle." His words hung in the air, perched on the edge of possibility, when suddenly, there was a crack. One of the shadows had knocked something over in the main shop, sending a cascade of sound spilling into our hiding place. "Did you hear that?" One of the shadows hissed, their presence looming dangerously close. "Of course, I heard. Now we split." "You go right, I'll take the left," another responded tersely, their voices thick with intent that sent shivers crawling across my skin. "No." I couldn't help myself, the thought of losing him, of being left alone with those shadows, knotted my stomach. "We can't." But I was too late. The shadows moved faster than I could react, darting down the aisles that curved around the store like a sinister moat separating us from the light that began to dim. "Hold on," he urged, and within an instant, just as the shadows turned their gaze toward us, he yanked me close and jumped towards a small window hidden behind a stack of crates. The glass shattered like my last threads of hope, and we escaped through the jagged hole into the alleyway beyond, panting for breath. But the taste of freedom was short-lived. The darkness had clearly sensed our flight. As we began to run, his voice rose above the chaos. "You need to discover your power. Only then can we save her." But just as we reached the end of the alley, a sharp cry broke through the night, cutting through the air with piercing clarity. My heart dropped as I recognized the sound. It was my mother's voice, wreathed in terror, echoing through the shadows, weaving sorrowful threads of memory and loss. I never imagined I'd hear her voice again, but it feels like a warning now. The whisper slipped from my lips as we skidded to a halt, shadows swirling around us, drawn back by the love that bound us, drawing me toward the very darkness I sought to escape. Staring into that abyss, a chilling revelation seized me. To fight for her, I would have to face my own darkness first. Time slipped through my fingers like sand, but as the shadows beckoned, I realized my battle was far from over. I had to choose not just for myself but for the very soul of the woman I loved, and I couldn't do it alone. The moment froze around us, the echoes of my mother's cry reverberating through the air, a haunting melody that wrapped its tendrils around my heart. The stranger's grip tightened on my arm as he faced me, panic washing over his features. "We can't stay here," he urged, his voice low but urgent, but my feet felt cemented to the ground, a chain formed of fear and longing anchoring me in place. What if it's really her? The question burst forth unbidden, tinged with a desperate hope that threatened to shatter the walls I had built around my heart. He shook his head, his brow furrowed with concern. "It may look like her," he said cautiously, "but the shadows can twist perceptions. They feed on your emotions, using them against you." "My emotions," I repeated, a tremor of realization dawning on me. The shadows weren't just after her, they were coming for me. "If I give in, if I let myself believe that she's in there, they will use that to pull you into their darkness," he interjected, his eyes searching mine, as if he were trying to see into my soul. "We have to go now and find a safe place where we can plan. I won't let you fall into their trap." "But how can I turn my back on her?" The very thought felt like a betrayal sharp enough to slice through my resolve. "Even if she isn't herself, she's still my mother." Suddenly, a shadow darted closer, their forms stretching and twisting against the walls of the alleyway, hungry and searching. The oppressive weight of darkness pressed against us, and the moment slipped further from my grasp. "We have to be smart about this," he said again, more insistently. "They want you to feel that pain. They're counting on it. Fight back against it. Come with me, and we'll figure this out together." In that heartbeat, clarity flickered like a flame igniting within the suffocating darkness. Together my voice quivered with the hope he'd offered and the recognition that I was not alone in this. With a subtle nod, I broke free of my paralyzed state, and we ran deeper into the alley, my heart thrumming a frantic rhythm. Moonlight shimmered upon the cobbled stones, illuminating our escape as the shadows seemingly melted into the darkness behind us. "Where do we go?" I gasped, my breath a panted whisper that mingled with the sound of racing footsteps. "There's a sanctuary nearby, an old refuge for those like us. It will give us the time we need to strategize." His voice steadied me, anchoring the storm swirling inside. We darted down narrow passages, each corner we turned presenting a challenge, an obstacle, but also a promise of safety. Hope flickered as I remembered stories I'd been told of the sanctuary, a place that could house memories and love long lost but not forgotten. "What's your name?" I suddenly asked, my curiosity breaking through the tide of adrenaline. He shot me a sidelong glance, a shadow of a smile crossing his lips, despite our dire circumstances. "It's Arlen." "And you?" "Emery," I replied, the name tumbling from my lips like a small declaration amidst the chaos. I never thought I'd need to introduce myself while running from shadows and searching for my mother. A small chuckle escaped him, easing the weight of despair that had settled in my chest. "Life has a way of throwing us into the depths, doesn't it?" I returned his smile, a fragile connection amidst the turmoil. But then, a shriek split the night air, and we both froze, dread pooling in my stomach. The sound rose like a sickening tide, and I recognized it well, the shrieking, distorted laugh of the shadows. They were near, relentless, searching for what they craved. Slowly, I turned my face toward the alley mouth, dread pooling again like poison in my veins. A figure stood there, cloaked in darkness, and though the shadows obscured their form, I sensed a chilling familiarity coursing through me. My breath caught. Could it be? Emery. The sound of my name was sung softly yet maliciously, laced with memories I'd wished to forget. It was a voice that echoed with my mother's timbre, yet twisted a promise turned sinister. "I have something to show you." I turned back toward Arlen, who regarded me with a mixture of support and trepidation. "We have to keep moving." he urged, stepping closer, ready to pull me away, but the darkness called, something primal stirring within me, a whisper urging me to heed the familiar voice. The choice hung heavy in the air, an unbearable weight pressing down, tethering me to the shadows that had once been a comfort, but now felt overwhelmingly suffocating. "Go, Arlen!" I shouted, taking a hesitant step toward the figure. "I need to hear her." Panic flashed across Arlen's face. "No, don't." Emery, but before he could finish, I was already moving, drawn toward the distorted figure that flickered with a woman's shape, flickering in and out of clarity like a weak signal on an old radio. "Emery, come closer," it beckoned, and I couldn't turn away. I was compelled, the shadows wrapping around me like a shroud, their whispers rising to a symphony of awful temptation. Arlen screamed something, but it was drowned out by the cacophony, my mother's voice mingling with the malevolence of the darkness, pulling me into an inescapable fate. And then, a cold, withering truth flickered to life. This darkness did not just want my mother back, it desired me as its vessel. The precarious threads of hope I had clung to threatened to unravel as I took one last, agonizing look back at Arlen, his desperation a haunting reminder of the battle that lay ahead, and before I could comprehend the depth of my choice, I stepped into the shadows, into the unknown. The moment I plunged into the dark embrace, reality warped around me. Thoughts of escape faded as the air thickened with memories I thought had long been buried. Sound waves cascaded into an unending melody, the echoes of laughter and tears mingling in an exquisite, tormenting harmony. The figure loomed closer, shrouded in shadows, yet all I could focus on was the familiar contour of her face, the one I had memorized in the creases of my heart. "Emery," she whispered, her voice crystalline but steeped in a haunting distortion that made my stomach churn. "I've missed you so much." Each word tugged painfully at my chest, the longing more potent than I had ever imagined. "Mom?" The question burrowed deep in my throat, each syllable drenched in disbelief. The shadows around her flickered momentarily, revealing the maternal warmth I had cherished, mixed with an overwhelming sense of foreboding. "Is it really you?" A smile, a maternal beacon, flashed across her lips. Yet even as she smiled, the shadows writhed as if her very essence conflicted with their ominous greed. I remembered the stories, the warnings whispered about the creatures that dwelled in darkness, feeding off sorrow and desperation. Yet here I stood, swaying between the urge to believe and the instinct to flee. As I edged closer, every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to heed Arlen's cries echoing in the distance. "Emery, I need you here with me," my mother insisted, extending her hand as the shadows pulsated with eagerness, edging toward me like enthusiastic tendrils. "Together, we can be whole again. We can find peace." Pain struck through my consciousness, a painful array of emotions swirling like a tempest. The idea of being reunited with my mother was intoxicating, yet the wariness of the shadows made my skin crawl. I don't understand," I stammered, feeling the tug fragile yet powerful between her love and the sinister pull of the darkness. "What happened to you? Are you really my mother?" Her laughter danced lightly on the air, sultry yet tinged with something else, something that warned me to be cautious. "Come, Emery. Trust me. I found a way to keep the darkness at bay while we are together. I can protect you." The white lies echoed into my heart, an enticing melody that stirred slumbering hopes. How long had I yearned to hear her voice, to feel the warmth of her embrace? But even as I reached out, hesitant yet longing, a vision flickered in my mind. The last time I had seen her, eyes filled with her own hatred for the shadows. "Mom," I whispered, catching the quivering edge of hope that danced with despair. "Come closer," she urged, her voice taking on a more commanding tone, thrilling yet chilling. And as I inched forward, the shadows hummed with anticipation. But then, a blinding flicker of light broke through, shocking me back to my senses. Suddenly, in the darkness, a flash of Arlen's worried face surged into my consciousness, and my heart stuttered. I didn't want to dismiss him, to forsake the only ally I had found in this tormenting nightmare. "Emery!" Arlen's plea cut through the haze. The urgency in his voice crackled like electricity, jolting me with a newfound clarity. "This isn't your mother. It's a trap." The shadowy figure paused momentarily, frustration flaring in her eyes, dark springs flowing beneath the surface, suggesting a growing malevolence. "Emery, don't listen to him. He's only trying to lead you away. Mom, please, I exclaimed, desperate. I need a sign. Show me you're real. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, mingling briefly with rage until it smothered whatever warmth remained. The shadows coiled tighter, desperation radiating from the very depths of the darkness. Don't you want to belong? To feel loved? Don't you want to be free of pain? I faltered, swaying on the precipice of her words. But at what cost? I can't just surrender. I can't let you take me. You're letting someone else control your fate, she hissed, the harmony of her tone fracturing like glass. The shadows pulsed, almost as though they were alive, reflecting my fear back at me. Each heartbeat drummed painfully against my ribcage as I realized that every unattainable dream was woven within the dark fabric around her. A shudder broke free from within, and I pulled back, inching away from that dreadful familiarity that twisted into something alien. Suddenly, from behind me, Arlen surged through the shadows, wild determination etched across his features. Emery! You have to fight back. Remember who you are. He reached out, desperation igniting his voice, blending into a relentless tide against the darkness. In that moment, my resolve galvanized into a shield of strength. No. I won't let you take my mother from me, wherever she is. I turned to face the sinister figure, tears flowing alongside rage that blazed inside. If you truly were her, you wouldn't want this darkness. You wouldn't want to hurt me. Darkness quaked around me as her face twisted with fury, a mask cracking. You cannot escape this, child. You are part of the shadows. You always have been. No. You're wrong. I cried, awakening the embers of strength buried beneath anguish and uncertainty. I am not yours. I am me. In that very heartbeat, the shadows roared, lashing out as their grip around me faltered ever so slightly. And in the chaos of the moment, I glanced at Arlen, urgency infused with fragile hope coursing between us, and then, before I could react, the indistinguishable weight of the shadows erupted around me. The figure collapsed into a whirlwind of darkness, their shrieks merging into a cacophony shrilling into the void. You will regret this, Emery. With Arlen pulling me further from the epicenter, I felt a raw strength buoying me above despair. Yet as the shadows writhed against our escape, another revelation poured through. I had stirred something darker within. The deeper I delved, the closer to the center I approached. Emery, keep running, he urged, pulling me through as the shadows latched onto our heels, their whispers crawling beneath our skin. But even in the chaos, something ignited within me, a flicker of darkness of my own, a chilling reminder that not all shadows were malevolent. With newfound fear and dread, I recognized a troubling thought. Perhaps, unknowingly, I had summoned this darkness, and just as the alley opened into another, more expansive stretch that promised temporary reprieve, I sensed a present something or someone waiting just beyond the edge of light. Don't stop. Arlen pulled me forward, but a voice slipped through the shadows, beckoning. Emery, it was softer, gentler, like the lull of a fading song, but the recognition was tinged with something otherworldly, a calling I could not ignore. As we stumbled into a flickering pool of silver light, a pang of dread washed over me. The shadows shrieked at our arrival, and intertwined with a new depth of uncertainty, a harsh realization crashed within. They weren't just after my mother, they were after me, and the worst part? I hadn't escaped their reach at all. I had only begun to uncover the terrible truth that awaited in this relentless darkness. The light flickered uncertainly, casting ethereal shadows against the brick walls that closed in around us. As my heart raced, the voice that had whispered my name slipped further into my consciousness. Emery. It twisted like a silver thread through the chaotic symphony of my thoughts, somehow recognizable yet tainted with an eerie longing. Arlen! I gasped, pulling away from his grasp. Did you hear it? Someone is calling me. He hesitated, his brow furrowing with concern. What are you talking about? We need to keep moving. The shadows 1T let up. But the lure of that voice beckoned me, weaving a tapestry of memories I thought had been buried along with my mother. What if it's her? What if there's a way to her? The word slipped from my mouth as if driven by some unyielding force. Emery, listen. Arlen's voice pierced through the fog of desperation enveloping me. Don't get lost in this. It's dangerous. Her voice could be another trick. I turned back, torn between the urgency in Arlen's eyes and the haunting, gentle drawl of that voice. Shadows shifted uneasily around us, their whispers rising in frantic echoes warning of my encroaching choice. I need to find out, I whispered, conviction taking root despite Arlen's frantic objections. Please, you have to trust me just this once. Without waiting for his reply, I stepped forward, the air crackling with electric anticipation. The moment I broke free from Arlen's grasp, I felt an odd shift, tugging at the fibers of my existence. The light seemed to pulse with energy, guiding me toward the source of that familiar voice. Come closer, Emery. Just a little closer, it sang sweetly, wrapping around me like a cocoon that both comforted and alarmed. I could almost see her there, the silhouette of a woman, vaguely familiar, standing at the edge of the light. I've waited so long for you. Who are you? I pushed, straining to make sense of the blurry figure that flickered in and out of the shimmering light. My heart pounded against my ribcage, anxiety tightening its grip. Even as hope surged within me, the lingering wariness whispered that this could easily lead to another plunge into despair. I am part of you, Emery. Remember me? Before I could respond, the shadows hissed around me, simmering with anger. This isn't he who you're looking for. They roared, an unholy symphony rising above the light. The shadows twisted angrily, seeking to claw back the safe haven I dared to tread into. Suddenly, the woman's visage resolved before me, and what I saw sent a jolt through my very being. She had my mother's face, but her eyes were a storm, a swirling mass of emotions I couldn't decipher, hiding depths I did not yet know existed. I am the part of you that has been lost, she said softly, almost compassionately, as the shadows thrashed against her form. Together, we can reclaim our legacy. Mom? Chills erupted along my spine, my heart adrift amidst disbelief. Is it really you? An unsteady smile broke across her face. You've awakened me from the darkness, sweet girl. But you must understand the shadows are not just your enemy, they're part of our story. If you want to find me, you'll have to learn to embrace them. But I don't understand how. I cried, fighting the panic clawing at my throat. The truth reverberated in my mind, terrifying and intoxicating. She wanted me to embrace the very darkness I had feared all along. Do not fear, Emery. The shadows are simply misunderstood. They are protectors, guardians of all we hold dear. You have the strength to wield them. Her voice, an echo of love mixed with a whisper of dread, wrapped around me as if it could shield me from the wrath of the darkness swirling at our feet. No! Arlen shouted from a distance, physically straining against the tide of shadows that sought to hold him back. Emery, don't listen. This is a deception. You know what the darkness did to your mother. But as the shadows crashed around him, the haunting melody from the woman echoed louder in my mind. Do you not see? He fears your power. The strength that lies within you is meant to conquer, not to cower. The conflicting emotions ricocheted within my heart as the shadows released a cacophony of anguished wails, sharpening my instinct to protect those I loved and myself. What if, I murmured, weighing the choice against every fiber of my being? What if the darkness truly held answers I had yearned for my entire life? Then, abruptly, everything stilled. The shadows recoiled as if sensing my indecision. The woman's expression softened, revealing a vulnerability that made me ache with recognition. You must choose. Are you willing to embrace both the light and the shadows within? Crippling uncertainty washed over me. Could I defy everything I had been told about the shadows? But as I wavered, glancing at Arlen's panicked face, I felt the threads of fate weaving tighter around me, threatening to sweep me into their depths. Just then, the moment shattered as a blinding light bloomed to life at the center of the shadows. I felt its warmth reach toward me, and with it, clarity. In that heartbeat, something unexpected stirred deep within, a latent flicker igniting in the shadows surrounding me, but as I began to take a step toward that flame of hope, it shattered in an eruption of blinding light. When the brilliance subsided, where my mother once stood was replaced by a figure swathed in darkness, its form alien yet oddly familiar, their fierce eyes boring into my soul. Your destiny is unfolding, Emery. The voice was mellifluous, yet it dripped with palpable malice. The shadows curled around me like serpents, promising protection but also danger, and I realized in that moment that I was caught in a web far more intricate than I could fathom. And then, just as I grasped the weight of my choice, the shadows suddenly surged toward Arlen with a hunger I had never witnessed before. My heart lodged in my throat as panic consumed me, sensing the fragile thread of our bonds hanging by the merest whisper. "Arlen!" I screamed, my voice cracking with an unbridled fear. But where shadows had once thrashed, a new revelation began to unfurl, a dark promise waiting to be seized as Arlen was swept into the cursed embrace. And for the briefest moment, as I wrestled with the darkness swirling like a storm, I felt the weight of an ancient truth weighing down on me, whispering of a horrendous choice I might have to make, for in the depths of my despair, I began to understand, the shadows did indeed just want me, they wanted to make me whole, at any cost. The shadows writhed around Arlen as he cried out, his voice piercing through the oppressive gloom that threatened to swallow us whole. I froze, the world around me narrowing into a tunnel of despair and urgency. "No!" I screamed, the word tearing from my throat as I tried to reach him, but the shadows clawed at my limbs, rooting me in place, refusing to let me go. "Emery!" Arlen's voice churned with panic, desperation wrapping around him like a shroud. "Don't let them take me. You have to fight." "But fight what?" The torment within me swelled, laced with confusion and sorrow. The woman's shadowy form whispered from the edges of my mind, urging me to embrace her offer of power, to merge with the darkness, promising safety and strength in the chaos, yet it felt eerily wrong. My breath hitched in my throat as the shadows twisted tighter around Arlen's form. I could see the terror in his eyes, a reflection of my own fear grappling with newfound hope. "Emery, please!" he shouted, clawing at the darkness that enveloped him like vines around a tree trunk. "Aren't you going to save him?" The voice of the woman, my mother, or what I thought was her, cut through the tumult, laced with an unsettling undercurrent. "He is weak. He can't fathom the truth of your power. You are destined for greater things." "No." I thrust my chin up defiantly, straining against the shadows. "I want he given to you." The words were raw, a declaration of my intention to fight, even as the darkness clung like a vice around my mind, coaxing me closer to surrender. The shadows howled in response, and suddenly the world around us transformed into a swirling tempest of light and dark, filled with haunting echoes that lashed against my senses. Arlen's face loomed before me, his anguish snapping against my heart like a fraying thread. "Emery, you have to remember. You are not alone in this." He sounded as if he were talking through water, the grasp of the shadows squeezing tighter, yet the intensity of his voice cleaved through the veil. In the midst of that maelstrom, I closed my eyes, seeking a fastened sense of self amid the chaos. Memories of my mother's laughter surfaced, her warm embrace on cold winter nights. But each memory I grappled for was laced with the anguish of loss, the reminder that she would never return as I desired. No, this wasn't my mother. This was a cruel mockery, a spectre fashioned from the fragments of what once was and twisted by shadows seeking to control me. Then, a small flicker caught my heart, a fleeting memory of Arlen's unwavering belief in me on our journey together, the way he pushed me to go beyond the limits I had set for myself. Empowered by that thought, I flung my arms out wide, summoning what strength I had left. "I will not be afraid of the shadows anymore. None of you can deter me." As if drawn to my resolve, the shadows hesitated momentarily, their grip loosening just enough for me to take an instinctual leap toward my friend who now stood half hidden in darkness. "Trust me!" I managed to shout, my voice growing steadier despite the quaking of my heart. His eyes flared with a spark of recognition. "I trust you. Always." With one last surge of defiance, I reached into the depths of my being and embraced the shadows swirling inside me, transforming my fear into a fierce light that flickered like a flame against the abyss. A pulse of warmth blazed through me, and I felt the tumult around us shift, allowing the shadows to dissolve slightly. But then, just as I grasped hold of this ephemeral power, the darkness around Arlen seized him anew, thick tendrils slithering up his arms, threatening to drag him into oblivion with renewed desperation. "Emery!" He snapped back against the shadows, but they squeezed tighter than before, despair clinging to him like a lifeline straining against a sinking ship. With my heart thrumming like a war drum, I raced forward, and in that whirlwind of chaos, an unexpected clarity surfaced, a bright, searing truth that pushed through the haze. The shadows, while wicked, were not inherently evil. They were born from pain. Just like mine. I can't let them take you. I lunged toward Arlen, focusing on the light emanating from me, not to ward off the darkness, but to harness its depth. Suddenly, the darkness spiraled around us, but instead of fear, I found a strange understanding threading through my veins. Beneath it lay a layer of warmth that felt comforting, like a balm for an old wound. "We're connected," I murmured softly, and as I turned back to the shadows, they seemed to pulse in rhythm to my heartbeat, listening, waiting. Just as I made that realization, a flicker of movement pulled my gaze back to Arlen, whose expression had shifted suddenly from fear to fury. "Emery! Get back!" His voice echoed like a storm, a warning that curled through the air, and then an explosion. A shocking bolt of energy erupted from the center of the shadows, and I was thrown back, hitting the ground hard. I gasped for breath, confusion and fear flooding my system, as the darkness surged once more. The shadows that had once appeared chaotic and ravenous now morphed into a swirling vortex, a tempest of emotions and untapped secrets. And amid that chaos, I glimpsed a doorway, a fissure opening just beyond our reach, pulsing with a light of its own. Emery, in an instant, everything crystallized into a singular moment. In the chaos around us, that brief connection shimmered, and I realized that beyond that door lay both possibility and peril, an understanding of the shadows I had never dared to explore. "Arlen, we have to go!" I cried out through the disorienting whirlwind, the air thick with unsaid fears and haunting revelations, born from the collision of our entwined destinies. Yet as I pulled back toward him, the shadows wrenched their hold upon Arlen, dragging him toward that fissure. No matter how much he struggled against it, dread filled me as I witnessed it all unfold. A deafening silence ricocheted before me, and as I extended my hand in desperation, I had the haunting sensation that if I reached out too late, I might lose him forever. He was caught in a struggle against the shadows, and with a chilling finality, I realized in choosing to embrace the darkness within, I might just lose everything I'd ever fought for. "Emery!" His voice gleamed with urgency as he looked back one last time, eyes wide with terror and a spark of defiance, teetering on the precipice of fate as he began to slip through the shadows. And in that fleeting moment, as his figure blurred before my eyes, a single thought resonated within me, weaving through the chaos a premonition that both terrified and electrified. The shadows were merely the beginning, and behind them lay truths that could upend everything I had ever believed about my past and my future. I stood frozen, torn between the chaotic vortex that threatened to tear us apart and the small glimmer of light that beckoned just beyond the shadows. Arlen's face was a mixture of fear and fierce determination, and I knew that if I did indeed act, I would lose him to the darkness forever. "Emery!" he shouted, desperation threading through his voice as he fought against the inexorable pull of shadows. My heart raced, and suddenly, every memory, every shred of love I felt surged within me, igniting the fire of determination that had been smoldering ever since I uncovered the truth of my mother and her connection to these shadows. "Hold on!" I screamed, channeling every ounce of strength I had left. "I want to let go." With a fierce shout, I launched forward, arms outstretched, reaching for him. A blinding light erupted from my core, illuminating the darkness surrounding us, casting long shadows against the walls, seeming to weaken the grips that bound him. "Emery," he gasped, searching my eyes as if I were the anchor he needed to pull him back from the brink. I could feel the energy swirling around us, coiling like a serpent, driven by the tempest of emotions coursing through me: love, fear, defiance. At that moment, the shadows began to hiss and retreat, recoiling from the light that radiated from my heart. I steeled myself, locking gazes with Arlen, who was teetering on the edge. "Together?" I called, my voice a lifeline stretching across the chaos. "I believe in you," he shouted back, his strength fighting the pull of the darkness. That simple affirmation cut through the labyrinth of my thoughts, a lifeline in the suffocating void. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, letting my essence merge with the warmth of light swirling within me. "You can't have him," I cried, a deep-seated conviction empowering my words, as I threw my arms wide, summoning the light that intertwined within the shadows. "We're not afraid of you." The shadows roared in protest, writhing violently as they began to falter against the force of the radiance emanating from me. And with that, I tapped into a deeper part of myself, pulling upon the memories of all those who had believed in me, my mother, my father. Arlen. Every whisper of hope became fuel, igniting a blaze within that pushed the darkness back. I felt Arlen's hands clasp mine, and in that moment, a rush of vitality flowed between us, a pulse of energy so potent it dispelled the shadows with an electric charge. "Hold on, Emery," he urged, determination blazing in his eyes. As we pulled each other closer, the shadows rushed back, but we stood firm, a beacon against the approaching storm. Together? Our voices wove into a single strand, anchoring us side by side against the fear grasping at our hearts. "I am not my mother's darkness," I declared, a truth that cracked through the layers of uncertainty. "We are our own, united in love." The blazing light enveloped us, illuminating the swirling darkness and flooding my senses. Shadows screeched, the cacophony of their despair against the purity of our bond, igniting a wildfire of energy that reverberated through the abyss. The shadows surged forward, exuding anger, but even in their rage, I found the flickering remnants of compassion growing brighter within me. In the tumultuous pool of chaos, the darkness started to dissipate, revealing the shimmering light that danced into existence. The shadows dissolved around us in wild flickers, almost begging not just for power, but for understanding. "Let it go!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the rising tempest. "You don't have to fight. You can choose." And in that heartbeat, as we clung to each other, light enveloped us wholly, a radiant promise of acceptance flooding my heart. The shadows shuddered, as if struck by an epiphany, flickering momentarily before revealing shapes hidden within the women, drifting in and out of my memories, echoes of laughter shimmering through the light, pain and joy merging as they sighed free from their torment. Arlen's grip tightened. The shadows shimmered once more before beginning to dissolve, revealing the light that sparkled in the depths. My breath caught as I glimpsed the silhouette of my mother as she emerged, not fully cloaked in the darkness, but standing on the precipice of recognition, a woman bathed in fragile hope. And in that crystallized moment, the shadows flowed around her, now no more than whispers of what once was, cleaning out the pain and unearthing a thin strand of beauty. The flickering essence of my mother glimmered as she reached out, her voice soft and laced with a gentle strength. "My dear, you found your way." Tears racked my throat, my heart a stunning ache as I strained to reach for her. "Mom?" The word slipped from my lips, trembling with both fear and elation. She smiled, a radiant warmth spreading across her features, but I felt her eyes linger on Arlen, understanding shimmering amid the lingering shadows. "You bring the light, Emery, and you must not turn away from it." The shadows pulsed gently, retreating as she embraced the flicker of awareness I had ignited within me. "I'll always choose to light my own path," I declared. Arlen nodded in agreement, grinning through his tears. "Let us not just escape. Let us face this together." With resolute strength, we turned toward the depths of shadowy remembrances. Now, they shimmered with potential voices of the past, contributing to our now a wide array of possibilities awaiting transformation, melding light and dark in a dance only we could orchestrate. And as I took that step forward, hands intertwined, I felt the thrill of battles won and lost, standing shoulder to shoulder with those who had come before and those standing with me, echoing the truth: darkness may bend us, but it could never break the bond woven in love, resilient and unyielding. As the barrier between shadows and light shimmered and bowed to our will, I took a deep breath, empowered beyond belief, knowing I would always come back for her, back to the place we once lost, and carve a new path alongside Arlen and my mother, healed in a hope rebirth. We forged ahead, ready to pull light and shadow together, the echoes of the past merging into something infinitely more powerful, a testament to our choice. And as I stepped forward into what awaited us, the promise of acceptance floated through the air like a melody set free. In that resounding silence, the finality resonated with strength. No matter the shadows that linger, I am light, the unwavering bond that can never be severed, evermore.